Welcome to Lesson 3, Seeing Through the Figure and Perspective. Let's talk about overlaps. Overlaps. Why are they important? It gives an illusion of depth, even with just line art, without even rendering it. Here is a comparison of a figure with and without overlaps. Can you tell the difference? I marked all the overlaps on the body with the color red. The overlap lines will look like the letter T. The one on the right without any overlaps can make the figure look flat. All the folds on the body and foreshortening can cause overlaps. Foreshortening is when a form is in front or behind another. One way to practice overlaps from real life is to draw trees. They have many unexpected twists and turns. It's a good exercise to do when you are outside and have some free time to draw in your sketchbook. I want to share some examples of how you should draw your forms. When drawing a form, it's important to never use a line that breaks that shape. As you can see, when drawing a shape, the line travels around the volume. It's important to convince the viewer that it is a 3D object that can occupy space. Draw forms combined as exercise. When more than one volume or shape are connected and rest on top of each other, it will create an overlap. This can affect when there is a muscle in the body, but you don't have to worry about that right now. Use overlaps even if you don't see it on the figure. I recommend to try adding overlaps to your figure where you believe it should be. Ask yourself if the part is over or under the next part of the skin. A tip to always remember: try to avoid ladders when drawing the folds of the skin. When I say ladder, I mean try not to draw the same lines in the same thickness of space. When drawing, it's extremely easy to make this mistake. Tangents. Avoid them at all costs. Tangents in art term is when two or more lines meet at the same spot. Tangent lines will make your drawings flat and confusing to the viewer. To fix it, move the line or create an overlap. You will be surprised how often artists make these mistakes. Next time when you draw, pay close attention to them. Here's another tip. Avoid symmetrical curves like a snowman shape. It is a human unconscious natural attractiveness to make everything symmetrical, so you have to make an effort to break that. Asymmetrical lines gives the viewer a chance to bounce from place to place to look at. It emphasizes a natural sense of balance and movement. Now I will draw a figure in a lying position, focusing on just shapes. A figure in a lying position is a way to draw a pose in a drastic perspective. When you are still starting with figure drawing, I highly recommend just drawing with simple shapes without worrying about the details, and learn to combine them to better understand perspective. When you see a figure in a lying position, I recommend drawing a plane on the floor to show the perspective. I am making sure that each of the shapes are facing the right direction since the body is twisted as it is laying down. After finishing the shapes, I decided to show you guys what it would look like if I drew over my guidelines. In the chest area, I noticed a ladder on the skin, so I redrew it into separate individual lines. A simple answer to know about perspective is that objects turn smaller as they are further away, and there will be a vanishing point when you find out what the angle is. Now let's further explain about perspective. I want to share one example of a classical painter named Andrea Mantegna. He was one of the first painters to experiment perspective during the Renaissance era. Isn't it confusing to look at? The perspective looks odd because it does not follow the foreshortening rule. As you can see, the upper part of the body is larger than the legs to his feet. So he looks like a short person with small feet. If it was in a correct perspective, his body will be turning smaller as it is further away, with his feet being the largest in the image. However, I want to add that I believe Mantegna knew what he was doing because if you look at his older paintings, he knew how to paint bodies in perspective. For this painting, I believe he purposely made the head large to force the viewers to look at his face so that the focus is not only at the open wounds of the hands and feet, plus to add the crying people next to the body. If the head of the Christ was small, then the crying people will have to be painted smaller as well. It was an illustration choice to make a better composition. Though the main reason I wanted to show you is that this painting is also an incorrect way of using foreshortening because the whole upper body is painted larger. I have 5 more things I would like to share about perspective. Most of these I learned at art college and from a David Finch video that I found really helpful, but I'm going to make it shorter and organized and add some of my ideas to make it easier to understand. To understand foreshortening, using a simple shape, I will show you what foreshortening would look like. Here is a normal cylinder standing up. As the cylinder is facing towards us, the shape turns shorter. We see the bottom of the cylinder and see the roundness at the end. The top starts to taper to a vanishing point and gradually goes lower as it tilts more. Then we will only be left with the bottom of the cylinder. I'm going to draw some rectangles in an angle. Starting from the horizon line, which is our eye level, this can change based on if we are standing, sitting down, etc. This is the original length of the rectangle that I'm going to draw in perspective. I'm doing this very roughly without any accurate measurements. The 2 vanishing points will help me draw the rectangle. Now, if I was to turn the rectangle, the 2 vanishing points will shift in the same distance. I roughly drew a curve to mark where I wanted the rectangle to move. I then used the new vanishing points to figure out the angle of the rectangles. If you were to draw a rectangle to the opposite side, the vanishing point will move to the right. I'm going to further explain how overlaps can affect perspective and make your drawing feel like it has depth. I'm using this as the base. They're the same width and space. Now I'm going to draw lines over the other when I want to make the top part closer to me. Because the bottom one is behind the middle and top, now it looks farther away. I can do the opposite direction for the next example. As you can see, even though they started with the same shape, because of overlaps, they look completely different. From a flat shape, by using overlaps, we can make forms feel closer or farther away from us. If you do this incorrectly, your drawing will look flat and it may be the reason why your sketches look better than your clean line art. Constantly ask yourself if the shape is closer or farther away from you when you draw your overlaps. A little basic perspective trick we all learned in art college is this technique I'm going to show you. I am drawing a rectangle in perspective. Now I am using the corner to draw an angle. On the next top corner, I am drawing the same angle so that it is parallel to the previous angle. With the help of the vanishing point, I can find where the next triangle ends. This can go on forever. And the rectangle are the same exact size, turning smaller in perspective. If you've seen a house layout, you would have seen this door drawing. The door size does not change as it swings open and closed from the hinge. This is the same for the arms and legs of a human body. Now, using all of these knowledge, I'm going to draw a human in perspective. First, a standing figure. I'm going to roughly draw a rectangle in a 3-point perspective. I can check the angle of the figure by using each of the vanishing points. The easiest measurement is the length from the head to the end of the pelvis. It's the same length from the end of the pelvis to the bottom of the feet. Using the parallel lines, I can find the length of the legs like from the 4th perspective guide. The length of the ribs is the same length with the stomach and pelvis. Although the leg's length can vary, for this figure, I'm using the chest size as reference for the size of the half of the leg. Now I'm going to draw a sitting figure. Using the horizon line and vanishing point, we can tell what the angle will be. I'm checking the length of the legs by using the parallel lines method. Starting from the feet to the middle of the knee, I can tell if I drew the lengths correctly when the end meets to the start of the leg. I am drawing both legs and the vanishing points are different. Using the door hinge method, we can tell how the legs will move. The hinge is right in the middle where the leg starts and the hips. As I draw, I constantly check if the closest form is overlapping the next form behind. As I draw more legs, I change the vanishing point and the foreshortening is apparent when the legs are facing towards us. I'm also finding a vanishing point when I draw the different angles for the arm. All of these methods are good to know, but they don't have to be accurate. As you practice, you will get the general idea of what the figure should look like, and you will be able to fix them when it feels off. However, techniques will be helpful to use for checking when you know for certain the figure looks off. That's all for this lesson.